Hello, I'm Joel Larson, and I'll be reading The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. This is the third novel in which the detective Hercule Poirot appears and has been considered the best crime novel ever written. Agatha Christie is the most widely published author of all time in any language, outsold only by the Bible and Shakespeare. Her books have sold more than 1 billion copies in English and another billion in 100 foreign languages. She is the author of 80 crime novels and short story collections, 19 plays, 2 memoirs, and 6 novels written under the name Mary Westmacott. She first tried her hand at detective fiction while working in a hospital dispensary during World War I, creating the now legendary Hercule Poirot with her debut novel, The Mysterious Affairs of Styles. With The Murder in the Vicarage, published in 1930, she introduced another beloved sleuth, Miss Jane Marple. Additional series characters include the husband and wife crime-fighting team of Tommy and Tuppence Beresford, private investigator Parker Pyne, and Scotland Yard detectives Superintendent Battle and Inspector Japp. Many of Christie's novels and short stories were adapted into plays, films, and television series. The Mousetrap, her most famous play of all, opened in 1952 and is the longest-running play in history. Among her best-known film adaptations are Murder on the Orient Express, 1974, and Death on the Nile, 1978, with Albert Finney and Peter Ustinov playing Hercule Poirot respectively. On the small screen, Poirot has been most memorably played by David Suchet, and Miss Marple by Joan Hickson, and subsequently Geraldine McEwen and Julia McKenzie. Christie was first married to Archibald Christie, and then to archaeologist Sir Max Mallowan, whom she accompanied on expeditions to countries that would also serve as the settings for many of her novels. In 1971, she achieved one of Britain's highest honors when she was made a Dame of the British Empire. She died in 1976 at the age of 85. Her 120th anniversary was celebrated around the world in 2010. Chapter 1 of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Mrs. Ferrars died on the night of the 16th-17th September, a Thursday. I was sent for at 8 o'clock on the morning of Friday the 17th. There was nothing to be done. She had been dead some hours. It was just a few minutes after 9 when I reached home once more. I opened the front door with my latchkey and purposely delayed a few moments in the hall, hanging up my hat and the light overcoat that I had deemed a wise precaution against the chill of an early autumn morning. To tell the truth, I was considerably upset and worried. I'm not going to pretend that at that moment I foresaw the events of the next few weeks. I emphatically did not do so. But my instinct told me there were stirring times ahead. From the dining room on my left there came a rattle of teacups and the short, dry cough of my sister Caroline. "Is that you, James?" she called. An unnecessary question, since who else could it be? To tell the truth, it was precisely my sister Caroline who was the cause of my few minutes' delay. The motto of the mongoose family, so Mr. Kipling tells us, is "Go and find out." If Caroline ever adapts a crest, I should certainly suggest a mongoose rampant. One might even omit the first part of the motto. Caroline can do any amount of finding out by sitting placidly at home. I don't know how she manages it, but there it is. I suspect that her servants and the tradesmen constitute her intelligence corps. When she goes out, it is not to gather in information, but to spread it. And that, too, she is amazingly expert. It was really this last named trait of hers which was causing me these pangs of indecision. Whatever I told Caroline now concerning the demise of Mrs. Ferrars would be common knowledge all over the village within the space of an hour and a half. As a professional man, I naturally aim at discretion. Therefore, I have got into the habit of continually withholding all information possible from my sister. She usually finds out just the same. But I have the moral satisfaction of knowing that I am in no way to blame. Mrs. Ferrers' husband died just over a year ago, and Caroline has constantly asserted, without the least foundation for the assertion, that his wife poisoned him. She scorns my invariable rejoinder that Mrs. Ferrers died of acute gastritis, helped on by habitual overindulgence in alcoholic beverages. The symptoms of gastritis and an arsenical poisoning are not, I agree, unlike, but Caroline bases her accusation on quite different lines. "You've only got to look at her," I have heard her say. Mrs. Ferrers, though not in her first youth, was a very attractive woman, and her clothes, though simple, always seemed to fit her very well. But all the same, lots of women buy their clothes in Paris and have not, on that account, necessarily poisoned their husbands. As I stood hesitating in the hall, with all this passing through my mind, Caroline's voice came again with a sharper note in it. "What on earth are you doing out there, James? Why don't you come and get your breakfast?" "Just coming, my dear," I said hastily. "I've been hanging up my overcoat. You could have hung up half a dozen overcoats in this time." She was quite right. I could have. I walked into the dining room, gave Caroline the accustomed peck on the cheek, and sat down to eggs and bacon. The bacon was rather cold. "You've had an early call," remarked Caroline. "Yes," I said. "King's Paddock, Mrs. Ferrers." "I know," said my sister. "How do you know?" "Annie told me." Annie is the house parlor maid. A nice girl, but an inveterate talker. There was a pause. I continued to eat my eggs and bacon. My sister's nose, which is long and thin, quivered a little at the tip, as it always does when she's interested or excited over anything. "Well," she demanded. "Sad business, nothing to be done. Must have died in her sleep." "I know," said my sister again. This time, I was annoyed. "You can't know," I snapped. "I didn't know myself until I got there, and haven't mentioned it to a soul yet. If that girl Annie knows, she must be a clairvoyant. It wasn't Annie who told me. It was the milkman. He had it from the Ferrers' cook." As I say, there's no need for Caroline to go out to get information. She sits at home, and it comes to her. My sister continued. "What did she die of? Heart failure?" "Didn't the milkman tell you that?" I inquired sarcastically. Sarcasm is wasted on Caroline. She takes it seriously and answers accordingly. "He didn't know," she explained. After all, Caroline was bound to hear some, sooner or later. She might as well hear from me. She died of an overdose of veronal. She's been taking it lately for sleeplessness. Must have taken too much. "Nonsense," said Caroline immediately. "She took it on purpose, don't tell me." It is odd, when you have a secret belief of your own, which you do not wish to acknowledge, the voicing of it by someone else will rouse you to a fury of denial. I burst immediately into indignant speech. "There you go again," I said, "rushing along without rhyme or reason. Why on earth should Mrs. Ferrers wish to commit suicide? A widow, fairly young still, very well off, good health, nothing to do but enjoy life. It's absurd." "Not at all. Even you must have noticed how different she has been looking lately. It's been coming on for the last 6 months. She looked positively hag-ridden, and you have just admitted that she hasn't been able to sleep." "What is your diagnosis?" I demanded coldly. "An unfortunate love affair, I suppose." My sister shook her head. "Remorse," she said with great gusto. "Remorse?" "Yes. You never would believe me when I told you she poisoned her husband. I'm more than ever convinced of it now." "I don't think you're very logical," I objected. "Surely if a woman committed a crime like murder, she'd be sufficiently cold-blooded to enjoy the fruits of it without any weak-minded sentimentality such as repentance." Caroline shook her head. "There probably are women like that, but Mrs. Ferrers wasn't one of them. She was a mass of nerves. An overmastering impulse drove her on to get rid of her husband because she was the sort of person who simply can't endure suffering of any kind. And there's no doubt that the wife of a man like Ashley Ferrers must have had to suffer a good deal." I nodded. "And ever since, she's been haunted by what she did. I can't help feeling sorry for her." I don't think Caroline ever felt sorry for Mrs. Ferrers whilst she was alive. Now that she was gone where, presumably, Paris frocks can no longer be worn, Caroline is prepared to indulge in the softer emotions of pity and comprehension. I told her firmly that the whole idea was nonsense. I was all the more firm because I secretly agreed with some part, at least, of what she had said. But it is all wrong that Caroline should arrive at the truth simply because a kind of inspired guesswork. I wasn't going to encourage that sort of thing. She will go around the village airing her views, and everyone will think that she is doing so on medical data supplied by me. Life is very trying. Nonsense, said Caroline in reply to my strictures. You'll see. 10 to 1, she's left a letter confessing everything. She didn't leave a letter of any kind, I said sharply, and not seeing where the admission was going to land me. Oh, said Caroline. So you did inquire about that, did you? I believe, James, that in your heart of hearts you think very much as I do. You're a precious old humbug. One always has to take the possibility of suicide into consideration, I said impressively. Will there be an inquest? There may be. It all depends. If I'm able to declare myself absolutely satisfied that the overdose was taken accidentally, an inquest might be dispensed with. Are you absolutely satisfied? Said my sister shrewdly. I did not answer, but got up from the table. Thank you for listening.